Can magnitude take them gate to wire in the Travers? Let's discuss in this spotlight. Hi everyone, Matthew DeSantis here with NYRA Bets along with my colleague Kaylie Shapiro, and welcome to this Travers Spotlight video on magnitude. Now before we get to this one, I want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe on NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, weekly programs, and so much more. Kaylie, it is Travers week.
Yes.
And we got to talk about some of these contenders. And one of the contenders that has drawn the most interest, and I think the most discussion, and maybe the most buzz, is magnitude for trainer Steve Asmussen, coming off of an impressive victory in the Iowa Derby. And of course, before that, the Risen Star had took a long time off in between those two races. What are some initial thoughts you had about magnitude and what he brings to this 156th running of the Travers?
I'm really happy magnitude showed up.
I am too.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We have a 5-horse field of some great horses, and
Yeah.
magnitude adds another layer of, another interesting layer to the
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
Being that, the majority that we saw from that horse was when he freaked in the Risen Star at 43-1, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I
big
still
price.
think back to that race and I'm like, oh, I'm so disappointed I didn't have magnitude that day at the price he was.
Yeah, really.
I feel like an idiot every time I look back at that race. Certainly, I think that was his most impressive performance to date, and certainly from a speed figure perspective. And then in the Iowa Derby, first off the bench, he got a chip, they got it removed, and the horse hit right off the layoff.
Yeah.
That was another impressive performance. Although I don't really think it's as impressive as a lot of people are saying. Certainly the fact that he won and he did it in fast time, and that's why he earned that figure. The competition was not nearly what he's going to face here, but he is a fast horse, and he ran that race in a fast time. Gave him a 105 figure. But now he has to go 1.25 miles and sustain that run. So certainly there are some questions.
This is the big question with magnitude, is we know what the talent says. And I'll echo your point. I am thrilled that trainer Steve Asmussen, as soon as that Iowa Derby was over, said, hey, we're going to the Travers. And he hasn't backed down from that. So credit to Asmussen, because a lot of horses are going to parks for the Pennsylvania Derby. Journalism staying back in California, running against older horses in the Pacific Classic. So a credit to Asmussen for bringing his top 3-year-old here to run against Sovereignty and face off against a horse he's not had an opportunity to run against yet. And there's no doubt magnitude represents something a little bit new, which is that one thing was interesting. This crop of 3-year-olds really lacked a great front-end speed horse, because we thought some of those might be Baffert horses, but they all kind of tapped out at a mile and a 1/16. We never really got Baffert horses that wanted to go much longer. Rodriguez won the Wood at a 1 1/8 in gate to wire fashion, but really outside of that, a lot of those Baffert horses that we normally associate with lone speed, great early speed horses, they didn't want the distance. And so magnitude kind of is this new horse that is a great early speed horse, but he's only gone 1 1/8 once. He did a 1 1/16 in the Iowa Derby. So the big question is, can he do 1.25 miles?
Definitely. And they're going to see here in the Travers
Yes,
if
they
he
are.
can get 1.25 miles. And, usually you kind of had this figured out already with the horse. If either they could or they had the potential to, I imagine Steve Asmussen has him entered here because he believes that magnitude can.
Yeah.
And definitely the chip, the time off, now getting brought back, and the work pattern, it just doesn't scream a horse that's fully prepared to take on 1.25 miles. I have tons of respect for Steve Asmussen and his ability to train horses up into a race. So maybe there's something that we're not seeing on the workout reports or the times. But to me, I definitely have some concerns about the horse sustaining his run, just because he's never been tested at this distance before. And when you think about it, in that Risen Star, that is the race that they tried to rate East Avenue for the first time ever. And that definitely sticks out in my mind. Magnitude was able to get the lead that day, but I do wonder what would have happened if East Avenue had just gunned it out of the gate.
Certainly. Impressed him. If those two had just gone at each other head to head. And I think it's a great point you bring up about that Risen Star and the fact that, that was the day East Avenue intentionally rated to see if he could do it. By the way, too long, didn't read. Answer, no. He cannot do it. He needs the lead. And all as a result, Magnitude was able to just get out there up front and go easy. He beat a horse like Chunk of Gold, who finished second that day. Chunk is one of my favorite horses, but let's be honest, he's a little bit of a Cinderella story. He's a $2,500 purchase that now won the West Virginia Derby. This ain't the West Virginia Derby. This ain't the Iowa Derby. This is the Travers. And we're running against the big boys now. And one big boy in particular in the form of Sovereignty. And it's going to be interesting because Magnitude, yeah, he's got great early speed. But unlike most speed horses that Asmussen trains, they seem so preoccupied with building up foundation on this horse in the mornings. A lot of 5 furlong works, not particularly fast 5 furlong works either. It's just interesting to me because one of the handicapping angles that I've used over the years is that when I see an Asmussen horse fire off a bullet and another fast work, maybe another bullet, and then a slow maintenance work before a race, that tells me that Steve has that horse cranked and ready to go. When you get bullet, slow, that is usually an indication I'm running to the windows to bet all my money on that horse because Steve knows he's got it figured out. This one has just been a slow series of 5 furlong and 4 furlong works. It doesn't scream, we're all the way ready for this race.
No,
to me.
Definitely just screams that they're trying to give the horse a good foundation coming into this race. And it's pretty interesting. I mean, I kind of just thought about this as you were talking. I mean, we know that Magnitude has rated right off the pace before, once before and was able to get the job done. I mean, judging on the workouts and the fact that this horse could struggle up on the lead and maybe getting pressed at the same time by a horse like Bracket Buster or Strategic Focus. Maybe they try to rate him.
So
that's kind of something that just popped into my mind. I mean, if Bracket Buster guns it out of the gate, obviously Magnitude drew the 1 hole, so he's going to want to be sent out pretty aggressively. But I could see him sitting off of Bracket Buster, no matter which way you put it.
Yeah.
I think that maybe they're going to be forced to go a little bit faster than they would like to up front. I could be wrong.
So here's the thing I would say about that, which I don't disagree with it in the broader context, but I think you brought up the point about the rail. The rail is going to force the issue for Magnitude. He can't. That's going to be such a job by Ben Curtis to somehow let Bracket Buster by and angle back out because Strategic Focus is right there too. So where does he get a seam then to be able to angle out to rate? Rating from that inside, I don't think he wants the pocket trip. I think he would prefer the fierceness trip of being outside of a horse and doing that. He's on the inside. He's got one way to go, which is to the front, I think. And I think as a result, Bracket Buster and Strategic Focus can have the ideal trips, just kind of stalking that pace and pressing that pace and pestering Magnitude all the way around and maybe not letting him get that 2-length lead that he's accustomed to in the early goings of a race. So
that's a great point. I could see, Magnitude and Bracket Buster linking up. I could see that as well. I mean, either
a little cornucopia Speed King situation in the Arkansas Derby, if you remember that of course set it up for Sandman coming from off the pace, who's running in the National Derby. Anyway, we're going to get that later. The other interesting thing about Magnitude, I think, is the pedigree to some extent. Because you have Not This Time as the sire, very good distance marathon influence. 21% winning marathon races are his offspring, going 1.25 miles or longer.
Absolutely. He's an excellent sire.
Excellent sire. He stands for $175,000. He better be an excellent sire.
But
he is. No, he is. For classic distances, he is. Out of a Bernardini mare, Rockadelic. Now, Rockadelic, interestingly enough, by Octave, who won the Coaching Club America Oaks at 1.25 miles. But here's the thing about Rockadelic. Has had 4 other raced foals, 0 for 34 from her other 4 raced foals. Magnitude is the only winner out of the 5 raced foals that she has produced. So, I know that if you go back a couple generations, you see the distance there. And Bernardini always is a great broodmare sire influence. Obviously, the same broodmare sire as Sovereignty. But to me, Magnitude it doesn't scream necessarily 1.25 miles, especially when you watch him move.
I think the pedigree says he can get 1.25 miles.
Yeah.
I have doubts about the horse physically stacked up next to Sovereignty.
Yeah.
Who to me screams that more than Magnitude does. Granted, I'm looking forward to seeing him in person. You bring up the second dam Octave, who won the Coaching Club American Oaks
Yeah.
at a 1.25 mile distance. And then I'm not quite sure the sales prices of the other siblings, but if you look into that, you might be able to find maybe an answer as to why this one's the runner and he sold for $450 as a yearling when she hadn't really had any runners prior. That certainly says something. But as a pedigree person and certainly a fan of massive breeding operations like Darley and the families, I love learning more about the families, the female families that they create. Basically, they actually had this mare Rockadelic originally, and they sold her. I mean, to me, that says something to me. I mean, they also, Sovereignty is the same broodmare sire, obviously Bernardini, who used to stand at Darley, and they have a lot of Bernardini mares that they use for their breeding programs. They got rid of her. I mean, they kept Sovereignty's dam. I'm not saying that I'm using that as a handicapping angle, but we started talking pedigree, and it's pretty interesting. I mean, pedigree says he can. Yeah. It's just a very tall task at this level of class. Yeah. I have my doubts.
Yeah. And it's going to be a big test because the last time out this horse faced, it's my birthday, faced Mick Swagger, faced a bunch of horses that are not going to be running on Saturday in the Travers. And it's going to be a big class test. I mean, listen, the best horse this horse has beaten is probably Chunk of Gold. Maybe East Avenue, if you want to make that argument. Oh, yeah. But, I mean, you look at a horse like Built, who he beat, has not come back to win again. Vassimo never came back to win again. And the Risen Star, a couple of horses from the Risen Star went and switched to the turf and have been okay. But, I mean, in terms of beating another good dirt horse, Chunk and East Avenue are the two best ones he's faced. Chunk is an overachiever, and East Avenue is a one-trick pony. He's got to get to the front. So,
there's
to me, this is a big
guessing.
class. There is a lot of guessing.
There's a lot of guessing because of what you just brought up.
And I think the most important thing to keep in mind when it comes to magnitude is that number right below ML. Morning line price, 2 to 1. There's a lot of questions for 2 to 1.
I mean, I wouldn't be jumping up. I understand 2 to 5, Sovereignty's 2 to 5. For me, I'm going to try to find value by playing straight exactas, which I've done every time Sovereignty runs.
It's true. You keep hitting.
And I just bet a crazy amount on him to win every time because I have not a doubt every time he runs. Right. And that's been pretty profitable for me. So I'm probably just going to stick with that plan instead of, jumping up and down of about 2 to 1. I don't even think I'll have this horse second with the way that I see the race playing out.
And I think that is one of the big things is how do you make this profitable? And I think, if you look at the sequence, listen, you could single Sovereignty in the pick 5, in the pick 6. And there's ways to make 2 to 5 profitable, depending on your opinions and some of the other legs of the late pick 5 sequence and the mandatory payout pick 5, which is all grade 1. But listen, magnitude, let's not shortchange this horse. Listen, 108, 105 buyer speed figures. You don't see those numbers assigned. They're very serious numbers. This is a horse that can get out up on the front end and go. There are some question marks, I think, on distance. I think there's question marks on the quality of competition. I think there's question marks on the trip that he's going to get on Saturday in terms of how much pace pressure he's going to get.
And again, he's never been to Saratoga.
And he's never been to Saratoga before. And Sovereignty relishes it up here.
And he's going up not only up against Sovereignty, who's the best 3-year-old in the division, but also Belmont, who has trained Sovereignty up to 2 wins over the track at Saratoga, and now he's going for his 3rd at peak condition.
At peak conditions, it's going to be a tall task, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be great TV because it's always fun to see a great speed horse up on the front end and whether or not somebody can track him down. And so that's going to be the big question with Magnitude is what's your opinion on his ability to get that 1.25 mile distance, take him all the way around, and whether or not he can hold off Sovereignty, something that nobody else in this 3-year-old generation has been able to do, except for Tappan Street once in the Florida Derby. But we won't talk about that. All right. Now, listen, I appreciate everybody tuning in here to NYRA Bets for this Travers Spotlight on Magnitude. Make sure to press that like and subscribe button today. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you, friends, it's now post time.